All right, today we're working on a Case 1845C. You guys having issues, no up and down tilt controls. And your hydraulic, there's two different hydraulic pumps on this machine. One that bolts under your seat is going to be the one that runs your hydraulics for your chain drives for your wheels. And then your second pump is back here, and this is what runs your up and down and tilt movement. As you can see, splines are pretty much going on here. This coupler is pretty messed up. I had a really hard time getting this apart with the splines shaved into there. That's why the radiator's out of here and everything. Normally you would not have to pull the radiator, but definitely makes it easier. It's not too hard to get out of these machines, but basically what I had to do was get two big pry bars in here behind these ears to work this off of here. And I did end up having to heat up the coupler with a torch to be able to get it to come off. But basically in this video we're going to replace this pump and this coupler, which takes a little bit of work. We're gonna have to pull the weights off of here. We'll have to drop the belly pan, get a jack on the bottom of this engine, jack it up, undo your motor mount bolt here. It comes through from the bottom. Then there's two bolts here, two bolts here. Take those out. This whole bracket will pull off. Then we'll get to replace this coupler and put it all back together. But wish I would have started this video before I tore anything apart, but it's pretty simple. The way I put it back together is going to be the way you take it apart. So I'll be right back here. All right, so we're back here. Now obviously not in ideal conditions. So if you're in the shop, drop the belly pan. Obviously I'm not crawling around in the mud right now. It's cold. So what I did was drop your weights off the back. Just because of this access hole that goes up to your motor mount bolt. What I did was took a bottle jack in here. Make sure you put a piece of wood on your oil pan. Last thing you want to do is crack that or break it. Put 2 blocks of wood under each side just to keep the belly plate from coming down more. That's not doing nothing. And took my bolt out of here. So now that's out, we ought to be able to jack this up here. You can see it's up just ever so slightly. Don't take it up a whole bunch, because remember you gotta line this bolt back up to get it back in, and if it's one person job, it's not that fun. But so now I'm going to take out these 2 bolts on each side, get to this coupler here, and I'll be back as soon as I get that off of there. Okay, we've got our mount off here. Here's a coupler. This is the piece the splines for the pump go into. And a lot of times this will strip and the pump will not on the shaft. But in our case, both pieces are junk, both need replaced. Doesn't look terrible from here. If you flip it around, look at this side though. You can see those teeth are about gone. Now the rubbers were not this bad, but unfortunately I had to use a torch to heat up the shaft to get this off, so those all went bad. But obviously they're new in the new coupler here, so pull your stuff apart here. I'll take this over to the new pump. Guys over there. This is our old pump here. It was pretty messed up on there. It's super tight. See how we can spin this and the shaft of the pump's not turning at all? And that's why we didn't have any controls at all. But pump still turns fine. But we got an aftermarket pump here. New coupler, aftermarket pump. We're gonna go ahead and put this on. This here. Like that. And we will be able to put our motor mount back on with our 2 bolts on each side. And then before you let the engine down, get your motor mount bolt started, then let your engine down, then tighten it up. And then we will pull our jack out of there, get our weights put back on. Now usually your weights would have nuts on a little welded in clip up here, and a lot of times loading these on and off the trailers, the bolts will get caught and break them. And unfortunately that's what happened here. We can see the nuts are gone, so we have bolts and nuts. So you have to drop the 3 bolts down in here farther that you can get to with the weight still on, and let the plate come down so we can get to the nuts with a wrench to take the weights off. But I always leave the back 2 bolts in just because the weights can slide on. Makes it way easier putting them on. But alrighty, well, I'll be back once I get this new coupler on, get them bolts tight. I'm gonna put a little Loctite on these bolts just because that's something I don't want to come off myself. But we'll be back here. All right, we're back here. We got our weights back on. Gonna bolt back in here for our motor mount and everything. I did end up having to retap these holes just because with the pump being so tight, these bolts will act as pushers. Whenever you go to take the pump off, you'll back those bolts out with a wrench and they'll push on the case and pull the pump off. Since mine was so tight, I ended up backing the bolts out as far as they could, and it messed up the threads on the very end of the holes. So I retapped those. I'm glad I remembered before I put this all back in here, but not like it wasn't 10 feet away. But I'm going to come over here. I need to swap these fittings to our new pump here. Probably have to get the vise out, but I'll get them swapped over. There should be O-rings underneath of these fittings. We'll have to replace those. And then yeah, you'll have to, when we put the bolts in, I'll come back to that, but you have to put the slide the bolts in here first, then slide the pump on and start these with your fingers. It's a little tricky sometimes, but nothing that can't be done. All right, so we're back here. We got our fitting switched over on a pump. We got our bolts already in the pump. You may be able to have one started slightly. Nah, actually, scratch it. Put some anti-seize on there. You never know when this is gonna have to come back apart. Make it easier on yourself. But no good way for me to film this, but we're gonna pick it up, slide it in, and start the bolts the way they are. Then we're gonna tighten them up with a 5/8 wrench. In my case, and I'm not saying your bolts won't be a different size, but we're gonna tighten her down and put our 2 lines on. You will lose a good bit of hydraulic fluid when you pull this off. You can tell here we're empty, so we'll have to top that off. In my case, I'm gonna throw the radiator back in. I'll probably include that in this video just because, but normally to do this job, you should be able to do it without pulling the radiator. It's a lot easier to pull the radiator, but if you don't want to go through the mess of draining the coolant and everything, you should be able to do it without. All right, well, we'll get our radiator back in here. Top hose on or overflow. Don't mind a little bit that spilled there. There's a bracket on each side. Take those off, or put them on. And then you sit in your mounts down here. These mounts need some new mounts down here, but new pumps on, hoses are on. full of coolant. I think I got the seat and everything pulled up on this thing. But I'll go up here. Yes, I do. All right, well, I'm gonna put the seat back down and we will verify that this fixed the issue. Alrighty, well, here goes nothing. Alright, well, just fed 2 bales with it. Double check I ain't got no leaks down here. Everything looks good. Get on fluid. Double check this antifreeze, and that's it. Not too bad of a job other than having to jack that engine up. That's about the worst part. Right. Well, thanks for watching. I hope somebody could learn something from this. And good luck.